Welcome to the channel. Today, we will explore a heartfelt and mysterious story about the Hollywood legend, Gene Hackman. Despite being famous for his legendary roles and an unmatched career, the legacy Hackman left behind was not just about wealth and fame. In fact, behind the massive fortune was a family in pain, shattered trust, and secrets that had never been revealed. In today's video, we will dive into the treasure that Gene Hackman left behind and why it caused his family to cry. Stay tuned to uncover things no one has ever known about the life and legacy of this man. Gene Hackman did not depart in peace. Instead, he left behind a fortune capable of shaking an entire family. Over $80 million in cash, real estate, stocks, and undisclosed investments that no one dared to mention. But behind those impressive figures lies a nightmare tearing apart every family relationship. Every dollar Hackman left behind didn't just buy mansions and million-dollar paintings. It bought dark secrets, late-night phone calls, and unsent desperate letters. Those money were fear, betrayal, and dreams crushed before they could even bloom. Gene Hackman didn't leave behind a legacy. He left a curse. Gene Hackman was once regarded as an immortal icon of Hollywood, a place where faces that once stood under the spotlight are easily forgotten. Yet, even the brightest stars eventually fade silently into the night sky. In his later years, he chose an unusual path, completely different from the legendary image the public had of him. There were no grand farewell parties, no tearful goodbyes in front of cameras, no memoirs revealing final secrets. Gene Hackman left Hollywood in the quietest and most secluded way. He disappeared. If you found Gene Hackman's story interesting and moving, don't forget to hit the like button and share this video with your friends. Leave a comment below to share your thoughts on the legacy Hackman left behind and its impact on his family. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any upcoming captivating stories and videos. New Mexico was no stranger to Gene Hackman. Since the 1980s, he had purchased a house in Santa Fe, a place secluded enough, wild enough for him to escape the glaring lights of Hollywood. The winding red dirt roads, the dark pine forests, the howling winds at dusk, all of it created the perfect setting for a star to close the final chapter of his life. Locals would often whisper about the tall, elderly man, his face etched with deep wrinkles, riding his bicycle around the small hills every day. He looked like someone I've seen somewhere before, a grocery store clerk once said, but no one was sure. Gene Hackman almost blended into the atmosphere of this small town, becoming a shadow among the elderly who spent their final years in silence. Hollywood tried to lure Hackman back with offers from ambitious young directors, scripts written just for him, but nothing could break the wall of silence he had built around himself. "I've said everything I needed to say," he once replied briefly in a rare interview. At 90, Hackman no longer cared about fame or wealth. The only thing he sought was peace, a luxury he had never had throughout his life on movie sets. However, that silence was not entirely a choice. rumors began to spread, and the darker sides of Hackman's life gradually surfaced through whispered stories from those close to him. It was said that his health was declining far faster than anyone had anticipated. The fleeting heart attacks, the falls no one noticed as he rode his bike down the street. The Gene Hackman of his final years was a shadow of himself. Hackman's family, according to unnamed sources, was not as harmonious as people might think. Hackman had 3 children from his first marriage to Faye Maltese, a marriage that lasted 30 years and ended in a bitter divorce. His daughter, Elizabeth Hackman, publicly spoke about her father's coldness. Fame consumed all the time he should have spent with the family. He was always working, always somewhere else. The relationship between Hackman and his children was never truly healthy, despite his full financial support. Family dinners, teaching his children how to ride bikes, or reading bedtime stories existed only in the imaginations of Hackman's kids. The neglect that accumulated over the years turned into an irreparable distance. Even when Hackman remarried Betsy Arakawa, a pianist 30 years younger than him, the atmosphere between him and his children remained tense. Many close sources revealed that Gene Hackman's decision to live in seclusion was not just for rest, but also a way for him to escape the simmering conflicts within his own family. Family gatherings became rare, phone calls grew shorter, and even Christmas was no longer a time for reunion. Hackman never said it outright, but those close to him understood that he feared the disappointment in his children's eyes. He tried to make amends with money, property, and extravagant gifts sent from the West Coast to the cities where his children lived. However, money, much like the characters he once portrayed, could not buy the most precious thing: connection and forgiveness. The distance between them reached its peak when Hackman retired completely from Hollywood in 2004, after his final role in Welcome to Mooseport. There were no goodbyes with colleagues, no farewell party from the studios that once considered him their golden goose. Hackman vanished like a strange wind, leaving only vague rumors about a solitary and stubborn memorial. Hackman's final years in Santa Fe were like a void, separated from the world. He spent most of his time in a small wooden house, reading, writing, and sketching landscapes. Those who were lucky enough to encounter him at the local grocery store or gas station described him as a thin man with deep eyes and a sharp gaze that was unmistakable. It was said that Hackman liked to sit alone on his porch, watching the sunset and sketching distant mountains. These moments were perhaps the rare times he felt completely free, without camera flashes, without false praise, without any complicated relationships bothering him. Just him, the wind, and the silent thoughts left unspoken. But even more frightening were the rumors about a personal fund, a shadowy fund that Hackman set up in the mid-90s. No one knew exactly how this fund operated, where the money came from, or its ultimate purpose. Among the documents discovered, there was a handwritten letter from Hackman to himself, like a financial journal. The letter read, "I built this not to leave behind wealth, but to leave behind control." This statement haunted his children because it proved one thing: Gene Hackman never wanted his money to fall into anyone else's hands, not even his own family's. As rumors about Hackman's health spread, the Hollywood media began to dig for the final clues about his life. Some claimed that Hackman had secretly written a will years ago, dividing his assets into various accounts so no one could dispute it. Others speculated that Hackman had set up an anonymous charity, where he poured most of his fortune as a quiet act of atonement for the children he had abandoned. The less Hackman appeared, the more he became the subject of countless conspiracy theories and fabricated stories. But in his small house in Santa Fe, he peacefully passed his final days, leaving behind not only a brilliant career but also mysteries that remained even after his eyes closed. Hackman's family had never truly understood the full extent of his wealth. With the image of a Hollywood legend, a two-time Oscar winner who had graced the most prestigious red carpets, no one doubted that Hackman owned a fortune. But just how vast that fortune was, where it was located, and how it had been concealed, were questions that even his closest relatives couldn't answer. Hackman's secrecy and reclusive lifestyle were not just personality traits, but an art, one that he executed flawlessly right up until his final moments. At first, his family believed everything would be straightforward. A handwritten will, notarized in 2001, was found, listing a few clear assets such as the house in Santa Fe, a bank account in California, and a vintage Hudson Hornet that Hackman had kept since his youth. The estimated total value was under $5 million, an amount that seemed insignificant compared to his fame and illustrious career. But as they dug through more old documents and delved into seemingly anonymous bank accounts, a completely different picture began to emerge. It turns out that Gene Hackman's name didn't only exist in the world of cinema. Since the 1990s, during the peak of his career, Hackman had started building a complex financial network linked to real estate, stocks, anonymous investment funds, and money secretly transferred overseas. Hackman was not just a talented actor. He was also a master at hiding assets within the financial world. The first person to uncover this clue was the family's lawyer, an elderly man who had been working with Hackman since the 1970s. Among the dusty papers found in a wooden chest in the Santa Fe storage, handwritten letters and internal memos about a series of secret transactions were discovered. Investments in emerging tech companies, land in the suburbs of Nevada, solar funds in New Mexico, everything was registered under shell companies with no direct links to Hackman. But as they traced the chain of transactions, each dollar led to a single account. The original account Hackman set up in 1993, right after winning his second Oscar. The total value of the assets, after piecing together all the clues, was estimated to exceed $80 million, a number that shocked even his closest friends. But what truly astonished his family was not the amount of money, but the way Hackman had hidden it all these years. No one knew exactly how he did it, with whom, or why he chose such secrecy. In some of the secret transactions, Hackman had even used aliases through trust accounts set up in Switzerland, the Cayman Islands, and Singapore. The biggest question remains: why did Gene Hackman hide his assets from his own family? Was it a lack of trust, or are there deeper secrets yet to be revealed? A theory began to spread, not from the press, but from within Hackman's own family. The children, who grew up in the emotional coldness of their famous father, now realized that they had never truly understood him. Hackman was not only emotionally distant, but also very detached when it came to finances, as if afraid that revealing even part of his wealth would drag his life into endless disputes. Therefore, he chose to build walls, creating impenetrable financial layers, so that even his own children could never access it. The emergence of this secret fund immediately triggered covert investigations. Lawyers, financial experts, and even private detectives were hired to track down the fund, but all of them hit dead ends. Gene Hackman had prepared for this moment long ago. The ghost accounts, the layers of shell companies, the untraceable cash transactions. Every time the family made a step forward, Hackman seemed to be a decade ahead of them. When the family lawyer officially announced Hackman's estate, most of what was recorded was just the tip of the iceberg. The Santa Fe house, the vintage car, and a few bank accounts. The rest, the real assets, remained hidden somewhere in the shadows of financial secrecy, known only to Hackman. And now, with his passing, that secret became an unsolvable puzzle for his closest relatives. And it was in those frantic searches that the Hackman family realized a stark truth. There were moments when they never truly belonged to Gene Hackman's life. He lived like a solitary legend, loving money in his own way, hiding it as a part of his soul, and taking those secrets to the grave. That immense fortune, instead of becoming a family legacy, now stands as the wreckage of a man who chose to abandon everything, including his family, to protect one thing above all else: absolute control. The old wooden door of the Santa Fe house creaked as it was opened. Faint yellow light spilled through the threshold, illuminating the dusty space, where the smell of rotting wood and old paper mingled with the distinct aroma of a home long devoid of human presence. The Hackman family stood silently before the scene, a frozen world where time had long stopped, leaving only shattered fragments of memories scattered across the gray wooden floor. They didn't cry immediately upon hearing the news of Hackman's death. This loss wasn't just the passing of a father, husband, or grandfather. It felt more like the aftershock of a silent earthquake that had been simmering for years, now erupting and sweeping everything away, from familial bonds and trust to the long-buried secrets. That night, sitting around the old wooden table, Gene Hackman's children opened each wooden box and old envelope they found in the corner of the attic. No one was prepared for what they were about to face. Inside the faded envelopes weren't the will or financial instructions they had hoped for, but handwritten letters that had never been sent, with Hackman's familiar shaky handwriting. The first letter was written in the winter of 1995, when Hackman had just finished filming Crimson Tide. He wrote to Christopher, his eldest son, whom Hackman hadn't directly spoken to in 15 years. The letter was very short, just a few lines. "I know I was never the father you wanted, but you must understand, I never belonged to anyone, not even my own family." Those words cut into Christopher's heart like a cold knife. He wasn't surprised to read them, but the pain of reading those words on a yellowed piece of paper, instead of hearing them directly from his father's mouth, still left him breathless. The next letters were filled with memories and regrets. One letter was addressed to Elizabeth, his youngest daughter, recounting the nights Hackman spent alone in the living room, rewatching old family videotapes. Hackman wrote, "I always thought I was protecting you by keeping my distance, wanting you to live without the shadow of my fame hanging over you. But now I wonder if I was just protecting myself." This letter was written on Elizabeth's 30th birthday, but it had never left the drawer. Each letter felt like a fragment of Hackman's soul, revealing hidden sides of him that no one in the family had ever known. He was not just a famous actor or a Hollywood legend, he was also a solitary man, torn between the desire to protect his family and the fear of losing himself in the role of a father. But it wasn't just the letters. The deeper the Hackman family delved into the old drawers, the more pieces of this complex puzzle they found: mysterious financial agreements, unexplained money transfers, and most concerning of all, a list of secret beneficiaries. Gene Hackman seemed to have created a separate inheritance list, one that included no family members' names. Instead, millions of dollars had been transferred to strangers: a childhood friend in California, a retired assistant from the 1980s, and even a server at Hackman's favorite restaurant in Santa Fe. Why did Hackman choose them, and why were his own family members excluded? No one could answer, but the shock and outrage flooded the room like crashing waves, drowning each family member in an emotional storm from which there was no escape. The first argument broke out that night. Betsy Arakawa, Hackman's second wife, sat quietly in the corner of the room. Throughout their years together, she had never truly understood the man she called her husband. The week-long disappearances, the rushed phone calls, the sudden trips. Now, they all formed a complete picture. Hackman had not only been distant from his children, but he had also built walls even between himself and his life partner. But the emotional earthquake didn't stop there. When the family lawyer revealed the list of secret accounts Hackman had left behind, the entire family was nearly paralyzed. A large portion of his estate, over $20 million, had been transferred to an anonymous charity just a few months before his death. The organization had no specific name, no public information, only a cold, cryptic acronym: the GH Legacy Fund. No one knew how this organization operated, where the money would go, or what Hackman's true intentions were, but one thing was certain: Gene Hackman chose to trust strangers over his own family. In the old house, tears fell onto the wooden table, soaking through the old letters. The Hackman family didn't just lose a father, a husband, they lost the final chance to understand, to reconcile, to hear the long overdue apologies. All that remains are tattered letters, faded memories, and a question that will forever go unanswered. Who was Gene Hackman, really? A failed father or a lonely soul? Until his final breath, some families are born to shine under the spotlight, while others are born to carry the shadow of a legend. A shadow so large and heavy that, even with millions of dollars in wealth, they never feel any different from being shackled. The Hackman family is a perfect example of that curse. Gene Hackman's name was not only a source of pride for Hollywood, but also a silent obsession for those who carried his bloodline: Christopher and Elizabeth, his two children. Christopher and Elizabeth, the children who grew up in the shadow of their father's fame, never escaped the label of being Gene Hackman's kids. Even as adults with their own lives, the name Hackman followed them like a shadow. Their father's success didn't provide motivation, but rather an invisible curse of comparison. Every achievement of theirs was measured against his Oscars and legendary roles, always deemed not enough and out of reach. And when the secret doors to Hackman's fortune were opened after his death, along with Betsy Arakawa, that burden didn't lessen. Instead, it became golden chains, shiny but tighter than ever before. As the lawyers began reading the will, which spanned hundreds of pages, every word seemed to lift off the paper, floating in the silent air of the Santa Fe room. The estate, valued at over $80 million, was clearly listed, ranging from real estate, stock scattered across California and New Mexico, to art collections, vintage cars, and secret investments that the family had never known about. But alongside those assets, Hackman left behind a series of extremely strict and daunting inheritance conditions. No one in the family was allowed to exploit the name of Gene Hackman to write memoirs, make documentaries, or sell any personal stories about him. No one was permitted to publicly dispute the estate in the press for any reason. Most notably, there was a secret fund that Hackman had named the Untouched Fund. This fund, established in the 1990s, remained a mystery for over 30 years, and no one, not even his wife Betsy, knew exactly what it contained. There was only one clear condition. Anyone in the family who tampered with this fund would immediately forfeit their right to inherit the rest of the estate. It was a forbidden territory, a sacred land that Hackman kept for himself, symbolizing absolute control, even in death. Ironically, during their lives, Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were the epitome of a peaceful marriage. The couple lived in a self-designed wooden house on a 12-acre plot in the Santa Fe Mountains, far removed from Hollywood scandals. Their longtime friends, Daniel and Barbara Lenehan, still recall the quiet afternoons, with Hackman painting, Betsy silently brewing tea, and both of them smiling contentedly in the vastness of nature, which they called their ideal life. But no one knew that beneath that peaceful exterior, Hackman never stopped controlling. Betsy herself once told a close friend, "Gene is the perfect husband as long as I don't touch what he calls his personal legacy." That personal legacy wasn't just his film career, it was also the control over his own story. No one was allowed to rewrite the history of Gene Hackman, not even his wife and children. When the will was revealed, Christopher almost laughed. He had won. Even in death, he was still in control of everything, even our thoughts. Elizabeth, the youngest daughter, the child who always hid behind unfinished paintings, had hoped that her father would leave her some freedom. But the cold will extinguished that final hope. Not a single line mentioned emotions or personal messages from Hackman, only terms, rules, and threats to revoke inheritance rights. The vast fortune felt like a burden shackling them, pulling them down to the depths of the ocean of expectations, where Hackman sat coldly, watching each of his children struggle. Amid all the arguments, rumors about the Untouched Fund began to spread through Hollywood's inheritance circles. Some speculated that Hackman had secretly moved money into unofficial investments, or even established an anonymous charity under a different name. No one knew for sure, not even Hackman's lawyer, who confirmed, "I don't know what he hid in there either." Betsy had tried asking her husband several times, but each time Hackman would respond, "There are things you shouldn't know, and our children shouldn't know either." Now, with both of them gone, those things they shouldn't have known had become an obsession, gnawing at every member of the family. No one knew whether they should protect that legacy or break open all the secrets Hackman had left behind. And amidst the tears, the arguments tearing apart the living room in Santa Fe, a bitter truth emerged. The greatest legacy Hackman left behind was not wealth or fame, but a family torn apart beneath the colossal shadow of a legend that no one dared to touch. If his roles on screen were just the tip of the iceberg named Gene Hackman, then the drafts, notes, and secret documents found after his death were the deep, cold, dark layers buried in the sea of memories. The upstairs office of Hackman's house, a place no one was allowed to enter for many years, not even Betsy, finally opened. Behind the oak door was a world unknown to anyone. Unfinished film scripts, covered in dust from the passage of time, personal journals with handwriting that was sometimes firm, sometimes trembling, and mysterious financial notes hinting at shady connections to the ghost of old Hollywood's mafia. The unacknowledged scripts were, in fact, the film of Hackman's life. Although a legendary actor, few knew that Hackman had always longed to be a director, not for commercial films, but for a movie about his own life. Among the materials found, there were at least 3 unfinished scripts, and the final script left Hackman's family speechless. His final confession began with the words, "If there is an afterlife, I want to be born without anyone knowing who I am." This script, according to Hackman's notes, was a thinly veiled autobiography, recounting every shadowy corner of his journey from a poor Marine to an Oscar-winning star, but not overlooking the cracks in his first marriage, the tears of his children, and the secret deals made to keep the Hackman name at the top. There were handwritten notes in the margins of the script, where Hackman seemed to be conversing with himself. Fame sometimes means selling your soul. How many people did I betray to keep the name Gene Hackman? That script was never sent anywhere. It sank along with dozens of unfinished dreams Hackman never had the courage to turn into reality. In addition to the scripts, the family also found 4 personal journals spanning from 1995 to 2022. The first pages were filled with sweet memories of Betsy Arakawa, spontaneous trips to Japan, France, and Italy, where Hackman wrote that it was only when he left the United States that he truly felt normal, not Gene Hackman. But over time, the writing grew distorted and erratic, many pages stained with ink, possibly from Hackman's tears or his trembling fingers during the loneliest nights. Hackman loved his children in his own way, but that love was as cold and harsh as the stage lights. He left everything, except for a gentle hug, a sincere compliment, or a moment where he placed himself on the same level as his children. And when Hackman closed his eyes for the last time, the family understood that the legacy he left behind was heavier than a mountain of gold, for it carried with it expectations, untouchable legacies, and secrets no one dared to uncover. In the eyes of the world, Gene Hackman was an icon, but in the eyes of his children, he was just a closed-off room, a father who lived by movie schedules and contracts. They remembered him not through fishing trips or cozy dinners, but through magazine interviews, those rare moments of seeing their father on the red carpet, close, yet so distant. Some nights, Christopher Hackman, the eldest son, stayed up late in front of the screen, rewinding and replaying his father's movies, trying to find a genuine glimpse of him behind the roles. But the screen only reflected what Gene Hackman wanted the world to see, not what he truly felt. Hackman wasn't a bad father. He was merely a victim of the glory he had created, lost between being a Hollywood icon and a regular man. Just when everyone thought Hackman's legacy was limited to wealth and fame, one final secret was revealed. Hackman had established an anonymous charity with an initial fund of $10 million, dedicating all his film royalties after his death to fund scholarships and build schools for underprivileged children across the United States. The foundation was named The Other Gene, a clever play on words, hinting at Hackman's true self. The poor boy who had been expelled from school, worked as a waiter, and dreamed of having a pair of shoes to attend school. Hackman wrote in a letter left for his personal lawyer, "If I could live my life over, I would want to start from a place where no one knows I am Gene Hackman. I want to be a normal child, with shoes that aren't torn and meals without worrying about tomorrow." In this way, Hackman redeemed the pain of his childhood and also sent a final message to his children. "I hope you understand that I never forgot who I am, and I hope you will find yourselves without living under anyone else's shadow." The memories of Hackman are not just the photos on the wall, but the scale of what he left behind. The blurred scenes from family movie nights. The glory of a bygone era wrapped Hackman's life in a shimmering halo, but when the Hollywood lights faded, all that remained was the echo of the past, where an old man still wrote letters to his children, knowing they would never be sent. Gene Hackman is gone, but the story of golden drops, tears, and memories that money can't buy remains an unfinished film, waiting for someone else to continue telling. Gene Hackman has gone, leaving behind a mountain of money, but his family is left picking up the shattered pieces of trust, love, and missed opportunities for reconciliation, now reduced to dust. The Oscars statues can be polished, but the wounds in their hearts, nothing can heal. If you found Gene Hackman's story intriguing and moving, don't forget to like and share this video with your loved ones. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about the legacy Hackman left behind for his family and the secrets yet to be revealed? If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of the exciting videos to come. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next fascinating stories.